Good evening, everybody. We are back. It's Dorcas and Scoots, and we are Shit's True, the podcast where we compare the movies that say they're based on a true story and the true story. Tonight, I I feel like we've been choosing so far movies that are either very critically acclaimed or at least have a cult following. And I was just like, you know what? I want to see the underground. So I found a movie about the B.T.K killer that had a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes and only 2 stars on IMDb.
Oh well, it deserved way less than that 2 stars. This movie was so bad. It was, and I love bad movies. I love bad movies, but this I feel like okay. So the movie was made in 2008, came out in
Mhm.
2008. I feel like that era of bad movies, like the late 2000s, like up until like 2010, that era of bad movies aren't bad good movies, they're just bad. Like they're just not good. Like if you go back all the
Yeah.
way back to like the 60s and you watch bad movies, they're so bad that they're good. Like I love those kind of movies. And then recently, especially like horror movies or killer movies, slasher movies, anything like that recently, they're good, they're just awful. Like
Yeah.
but this era of movies, of bad movies, was just straight bad. The
Well,
acting was horrendous, and I felt so bad because I don't know if you recognized him. I didn't recognize him at first, but that was Jason Voorhees.
it gave the vibes. It,
The actor who plays BTK in this movie is Jason Voorhees.
I have another fun fact. Okay. And I will say, of the bad acting, his
He was not part
acting
of it.
was good. He's
Yeah.
probably the only good thing about this movie.
Yes.
But the hooker that we're going to be talking about, I was like,
Hmm.
oh God, I recognize her. She was in a bunch of other things, but like small things. But she produced Crazy Rich Asians.
Really?
Yes, she's the producer. I was like, wow. So she really came up in life. She's a winner
Yeah,
in
what a
this one.
strange trajectory of it. Like, okay, Jason Voorhees, I could see
Yeah,
him getting involved in really bad movies like this, but like, what a strange upward trajectory.
right?
Like,
So,
how I want to know how she got there. Like, what happened?
well, maybe it was like, I'm just done being an actress. I want to be behind the camera. Like,
Yeah, but you still gotta have money or some type of like you have to know people.
well, she had an extensive IMDb.
You should just networked maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you're in that many movies, you're gonna meet people. Uh,
Mm,
as long as you're not an asshole,
maybe.
you could probably make friends.
Maybe.
All right. So the movie itself is called B.T.K. And I will give it to him. I did read the he's billed as director and producer, but he did say he made this movie really close to when BTK was like caught. So that's why spoilers, he changes the narrative a lot for him because he's like it was uncomfortable to try to depict actual people's stories. So I was like, I give it to him. So when this movie pops up, it says a fictional story based on a real person.
Right. Which at that point makes me question, like, why make it at all? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it does
I,
feel more like it's fanfic, you know?
yeah, this is the whole issue. Well, and around the time that this movie was coming out, this was the very beginnings of the boom of true crime,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm involved in the true crime community, and my other podcast does deal with true crime, but we very intentionally stay away from anything that's like newer that the people will still be alive, like the family and stuff would still be alive for. We stay away from that because it is creepy and weird, and it's, to me, it's on the same realm as the fucking Columbine fangirlies. Like, you're doing the same thing just in different fonts.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. Like, it's very strange to me. So I could not imagine being like, yeah, I want to make a movie about BTK, but oh, well, don't freak out because I'm gonna make it like fictional. Like, you're still, and then you
Yeah.
made it bad, and it wasn't even any good. Like, what was the whole?
Well, it definitely didn't make it to theaters. That's for sure.
Fuck no.
You
There's
know
no
this thing
way.
didn't make it to theaters.
Mm-mm.
All right, so we come in to a mustached man walking a hallway, going into a hotel room, and he's ready. Like he's throwing off his jacket, jumping on the bed,
Oh,
flipping through a phone book.
he says something like, "Man, I'm so tired." Like, "Golly gosh," or some bullshit Ned Flanders ass shit like that. Like,
Which,
they really made him seem
oh
like Ned
god,
Flanders as a serial killer.
yeah, it yes, and I don't know if yours had this. Maybe it's just my sound system. This, I know a lot of things these days are put out where like the background music is so
This
hellishly
was so
loud.
bad. Don't
This,
ask me what anyone said.
oh my,
I don't know.
I had to put on subtitles. You couldn't hear
Yeah,
fuck all that
not a
these people were
goddamn
saying.
thing.
The everything was so fucking loud when he's in the living room. Like, I fucked up, fam. I'm running away. The
Yeah, I was like,
birds fucking chirping. I was like, why are the birds in the house with you?
the
What
sound
is
design
happening?
was just
Oh, it was
absolutely
bad.
atrocious.
It was bad.
Absolutely. And I had mine turned up to like 40, and I still like could not. I don't know what anybody said. I don't
No,
know what anybody said. I was going based off of body and facial movements alone. I have no
reading.
idea, but I do know he was saying "golly gee."
Oh
Like,
yeah. So he's flipping through the phone book, calls up, and this is where I say terrible sound quality. Can't hear a word he's saying. But he lays down and he closes. I this is where I kind of was like, I think he called a hooker. I'm not sure because I don't know what the fuck he said.
yeah, he called a
Uh,
service from the fucking Yellow Pages.
yeah,
Wild,
right.
wild.
What a time to be alive. What a time. Um, so he lays down and he closes his eyes, which is a weird response. I feel like of like, hey, send me a lady, and they're like, hey, she'll be there in 20, and you're like, let me catch a quick nap. Like, just feels
I
like
mean,
an
I
odd
guess
time. I feel like I'd be too excited, you know?
he
But
had to, like, I don't know, rest or something. I do remember him saying something to them about sending him like a blonde, like a skinny blonde or something like that, because he's laying there and then there's a knock on the door and he opens it and there's a lady sitting there and she is not a skinny blonde. And he
mm-mm,
kind of looks at her, he looks her up and down and he kind of looks her over and you can just kind of see like, that's not what
it's
I
not what I
said.
asked for. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but when he lays down and closes his eyes, we get into this weird dream
Oh
kind of
yeah.
scenario. And it's like he's standing in maybe a farmhouse window and he walks out and there's a girl in a pit all tied up. And the narrator, I'm I couldn't find it officially, but I want to say, and I'm just really lazy too. This is pure laziness. That the narrations were from his letters that he wrote to the police.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I couldn't find that like we officially, yes, we use the letters, and I'm too lazy to actually go read those sick things, and I also don't want to do that.
Yeah, no.
So,
Mm-mm.
but anyways, so there's a poem going over, which he was no, he'd send poems, going over, presumably one of his. He walks outside to a tied up woman and he's strangling and beating and stepping on her face now, and then buries her. and then it starts a credits kind of roll, and they went full artsy fartsy on that one, and it's just like
Yeah, and the
flash
lighting is
here, flash
atrocious.
there. They chose yellow. It was a
Yeah,
weird.
yellow. I,
It was like someone was like, "Let's make it sepia tone," and they were like, "Nah, that'll make us feel like we're in the 20s. Let's just
yeah,
go
so they picked
yellow."
yellow.
Yeah, I don't know. It was off. It made you feel off. But it but in this, I do know this for sure because I did see on some documentaries, which I was very disturbed by how easy it is to find these things. He would
With the
draw.
documentaries?
Well, yes, but he would draw his fantasies out. And
Yeah.
they did use those drawings. Flipping through those credits, those were real
Mhm.
drawings,
Yep.
which is just disturbing. Uh, so then we hear a knock on the door. So he wakes up to the knock on the door, and it's obviously the prostitute. And this is when he looks her up and down. And he's like, "That's not my fucking blonde." Uh, but he starts acting real nervous and stuff, and she's kind of like, "Am I intimidating you? Is this your first time?" And he's like,
Weird.
he's
So
like,
uncomfortable.
it was a very uncomfortable interaction. But I will say, yes, the acting was bad, but I do feel like they made all the interactions feel very real, like on what would having a hooker in your room probably doesn't go that smooth, for most people. It's not like a
Yeah.
Rico Suave real moment. So I feel like it would be awkward, even if he wasn't a fucking
I
weirdo,
think for like
you
normal
know?
people, yeah. Like
Yeah.
normal people would be awkward. I think for like rich people, probably not that awkward. But for
Well,
like
yeah.
normal everyday people, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it would be I would
And
be
I'd be super
I'm too
awkward.
yeah, I can't
I
I don't
would.
know what to do. What to do with my hands. I don't know. Like
Exactly. I'm like, I need you to touch me first because I don't know what
yeah.
the
Well, and
stuff
we
is
need
here.
to discuss and they did not discuss.
Not a damn thing. Uh, so she's kind of like, he's like, it's not my first time, and she's like, well, cool. Can I go in your restroom? And he's like, yes, go ahead. And he then very quickly takes off his pants and like getting ready, and then she comes out in her cute little negligee, um, and I forgot what they did, but she saw his ring. Like there was some things happening, and she was like, "Oh, you're married," and he was like, "Yeah," but she's like, "Oh, your wife doesn't please you," stuff. And he's like, "Well, I got an idea here," and he goes down, he pulls in some rope, and I was like, "Oh shit, they're coming
That's
in
what I was talking about.
hot."
No discussion at all. No
None.
no kind of bound
Well,
nothing. Get
a
out of
little
here.
bit. He doesn't
After
immediately. Yes, he pulls out the rope, and I was like, and even her face is kind of like, "Bitch, you're not tying me up." She's getting ready to like let him down gently, and then she's like, Is that supposed to be for me?" And he goes, "No, no, no, it's for me." And I was kind of like, "Where is this going?" Because so then she's like, "Oh, so you're a freak?" And he's kind of like, "Oh, is this not common?" And she's like, "Maybe in California, but not in Kansas."
stupid.
I was like, "What?" Just a quick jab at them libs. Like,
This fucking freaks on the West Coast.
that's all I could think when I like heard that. I was like,
Listen, I okay.
what?
This is my thing. Every time people say shit like that, especially in movies, and even in real life, if I hear somebody make a comment like that, it is the funniest fucking thing to me. Being from a small town that's like very isolated and very like very Christian, them people are goddamn freaks. You
Oh,
just don't
you have
they just don't
nothing
talk about
fucking
it.
better to do with your
The
time
f-
than be
Listen,
freaky.
the goddamn pastor is getting pegged. I'm telling you right now. If
Oh yeah.
there's a town with 10 churches in it, one of those pastors at least is getting pegged. Like the Holy Ghost. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
We all know the
uh,
depravity that's happening.
I'm like, shut up. Like that's so stupid.
Yeah.
That's the stupidest thing you could have
It was
fucking said.
such a weird thing to say. So then it kind of jumps to he like you see the stuff on the bed, so you're kind of like, well, what happened? And then
Hmm.
he's just being tied to a chair now, and
Right.
he's like, tighter, tighter, tighter. And she climbs on top of him, and then she's kind of like, ooh, I got a surprise for all my special customers. And I was like, oh, he's about to get robbed. She's
Yep.
gonna fucking rob
Cardi
his
B
ass.
special.
Yep. She's robbing his
Okay.
ass. So she goes to the bathroom and she looks real nervous at first, and I was kind of like, maybe not. Or
Well, I was like, did she see something? Did I miss something? Did
I
she see
did.
something that set her off? I was
Exactly.
like,
They
what?
really played that so weird on how like
Yeah.
she's all
She's not confident about it at all. I mean, and you
no,
got this man
yeah.
tied to a chair. You've tied him as tight as possible, and you
Yeah. So then they're playing it like, okay, so she must sense that he's a killer, but
for
how?
like why? Yeah,
Exactly. Like,
what is it?
why would she feel in danger? He's tied to the chair, but so she jumps out the window. She gets dressed real quick and jumps out the window.
And he's talking to her though. He's talking to her the
Oh
whole
yeah.
time,
The
and
whole
she's
time
like
he's bitching about
She's
his
like,
wife.
uh huh, uh huh. Oh
Yep.
yeah, yeah, like talking back through the door.
And then he's like, hello, 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 and then he's like, shit, and he's like, and he falls over, gets loose, goes in the bathroom, realizes she ran out. He goes after her, but she's already gone. But she dropped her wallet, and I was like, oh,
Fucking rookie mistake.
you're so dead. You're so dead.
Yep.
So, then he wakes up, but he's at home. There's cooking in the kitchen, children
And it
laughing.
looks I couldn't tell if he was in like his bedroom or like a random bedroom.
I feel like it
Like
was his bedroom.
the way they cut it was super weird because like he's
Yeah,
waking up and there's all this chatter and stuff, and one of the kids like yells at him, and he like when he wakes up he's just like staring at the ceiling like stock still. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Did you
yeah.
dissociate and now you
I
don't know where you are?
well,
Like
I feel like
what
he does.
happened?
I feel like they were trying to play it like that,
Or like two personalities or something, like two different
especially once,
people or
yeah,
something.
it's like, especially once we get to the end of the movie, I feel like that's what they were going for, a feel of you can never tell if you're in his head or in reality. And it's almost
Right.
like he can't tell that either. Was this a fantasy or was this my reality? Did I see a hooker last night or did I not? Like,
Which is
have
so
I already
annoying.
killed the hooker? You don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's so annoying. We don't need to do that with serial killers. Please
yeah,
stop with the whole like mental health aspect of serial killers. Leave that to the actual professionals, please.
yes.
For the love of fucking God.
So then, and they're listening on the radio, the BTK, the warning's out, BTK killer. And the wife is
He's
like, oh,
back.
yeah. And the wife's like, oh, you girls, you can't go anywhere. And he's like, they have nothing to worry about. It's fine. You're being silly. And then,
And he keeps saying, "Oh, maybe it's a copycat because it's been like 30 years or
yeah,
something." And his wife is like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. They're gonna get got, basically." And it's like,
yeah.
ah,
And
oh
then
no.
he's like, he says something like, we just gotta keep praying for our safety. And I don't like the devil in my house this early. Let's go eat. Like, I was like,
That's some
so they're super Christian. They're
Yeah, that's some small town bullshit right there. I don't want the
that
devil coming
is,
through the radio. He's
but
gonna come
this
through the
is
radio and target us
right.
specifically
But
because
this
we
is where
listen
I
to the fucking
also
news.
have to be like, this was kind of bad writing though, because it is very like, shove this plot hole into you, like,
Yeah,
mm,
yeah,
because we can't just give little hints around the house. I would be like, oh, this is a Christian. Okay, no, just take that information.
yeah.
Um, so then comforts his family, and they all go eat, and then he's in his uniform, getting dressed, and you're kind of like, okay, so he's a cop. And then he goes, and then she's like, his wife comes in and she's like, oh, stay home and stuff. I won't spend time with you. And he's like, I gotta work, gotta keep these streets clean. And she's like, you're the hardest working compliance officer. I was like, oh, okay. So he's a compliance officer. Gotcha. And
Jesus Christ.
maybe different cities call them different things, but they're pretty much the people who come out and write you up for city ordinances, like, oh, your trash can's been left out too long, your grass is too long, shit like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
The little
The
petty
fucking
shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Useless.
So then it goes, he's like, I gotta work. And she's like, you work so hard. Just don't forget about us. And
She
then
is so goddamn. They made her so fucking annoying this whole movie.
she's so excited to see him in every scene. It's like, oh,
And
oh
it's
my God.
awkward
Like,
because he's like obviously not
oh,
reciprocating this energy at all.
none of it.
And
He's
it's
like, I
like,
have to work. She's like, how honey? Like, so over the top. So then he's in his van, he's driving around, and they're just kind of quickly showing you like quick snippets where he's like, son of a bitch, son of a bitch, son of a bitch. So you're kind of starting to get the feel of like, oh, he's that guy.
yeah, he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he's the guy who has to make himself feel big. Gotcha.
Mm,
He's gonna ticket everybody. And then
right.
he sees a booty. And this was set in the 2000s and came out in 2000s because that was the flattest booty ever.
But he was all for it.
But he was like, booty. So she's getting flowers out of her car, and you're kind of like, oh, is he gonna kill her now? But he doesn't. He just pulls up behind her like a fucking creep and just sits there. And so she's kind of like ignoring it, but looking and kind of ignoring. And then she's kind of like, what's happening? Do you need help? And then he just gets out of the truck, walks right by her, places the ticket in her windshield, and then tries to get back in the truck. And I was like, wow, that is a dick move. But that is a power move. I'll give him that. So then she's like, excuse me, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, it's on your ticket. And she's like, cool. Could you tell me what's on my ticket? And he's like, you can't block a sidewalk. And she does get a little high horsey here where she's like, it's my own driveway, blah, blah. And I'm like, you
Which
really
is
shouldn't block.
fair. It is
Yes,
her own
but you
driveway.
shouldn't block sidewalks. What about wheelchair people? Like, it's about accessibility. But he is being a dick about it. But
He's
she
being
does
a
get
total asshole about it.
he's loving being an asshole about it. Um and he's just like, you need to calm down, and she's getting angrier and angrier, and he just ends up getting back in her truck. And she uh I think she's the one who makes the comment about his dick size, and I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're definitely dying. um and but then he just drives away, and I was like, he's coming back for her for sure. Then we get a scene of him measuring grass. He's in this woman's yard measuring her grass. And it's all of like not even an inch taller. And she comes out and she's like, hello, can I help you? And he's like, it's not supposed to be more than 3 inches. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, my mower broke and my husband is at home. And he's like, nah, excuses, bitch, excuses. You need to get this cut. And then he almost slut shames her in a weird way, where he's like, I know you could easily get one of these young men to come over and cut your grass for you. And I was like, do you know this woman? Like, and she just
It's
kind of
such a
like,
weird comment.
oh,
It's
so
such a
weird.
weird thing to say.
So then she's kind of like, okay, yeah, well, I'll get it done. And he gets super smug, like because he put her in her place, she backed down real quick. Then he immediately runs into a dog that's running around, so he checks the collar, and he goes up to the door, and she's like, oh my God, Fluffy. And he's like, yeah, there's a city ordinance, so this is your warning, dogs can't be off leash. And she's like, he got out. He's like, fix your fence. And she's like, my fence isn't broken. And he's like, make it taller. And then she starts going in on him. So then I was like, oh, you're dying because you're even more aggressive. But
It's
then
like
it
every single woman that he has an encounter with, he is such a fucking asshole that he
such an
makes
asshole.
them like react to him. It's that thing that abusers do where
Mm-hmm.
they will push your buttons until you blow up and then act like, "Oh, see?
Yeah.
You're you're
Look how
yelling at me now."
unreasonable you are. Oh yeah. He's
Yeah. It's the whole
totally,
thing.
totally manipulating these situations.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So then he gets real smug. Okay, so he takes the dogs. Okay, so then we jump to the first woman and she's talking on the phone. So then I'm like, okay, this is going to be the death. He's picked his victim. He's going for the first woman, Miss Booty. And she's complaining about him on the phone. She's kind of talking about like, I tried complaining on him. They're saying he's the best. He creeped me out. Um, and you see him in the window. It like flashes him in the window. And this is when I was immediately like, Jason.
Hello.
But I thought they were just paying homage. Like they took this real killer and made it, honestly is what they did. They took a real killer and put him in a slasher movie. So uh he flashes in the window, she's still walking around. Then he flashes in her hallway, she gets off the phone, and you hear her bang upstairs, and she's kind of like, oh shit, Fluffy? And so she starts calling for the dog and she goes walking around. And then I love how she goes upstairs, like looking for the dog, walks into her room, and then goes, guess I'll get ready for bed now. Like, doesn't call for the dog again. Just so this woman has extreme ADHD.
Yeah,
she
something.
she walked through that doorway and completely forgot why she went upstairs and then
She's
was
like a
like,
sim.
I guess I'm going to bed now.
Yep.
So she gets dressed and she lays down in bed. Um, and then wakes up to another bang and goes to bed. And then she starts walking downstairs to check it out, and a lamp is knocked over. And then, but she's kind of in a panic. She's kind of like, what's happening? And I was like, if you feel that scared, get the fuck out of the house.
Right.
Don't go to the broken thing. Just walk out the door.
Common fucking sense.
Yeah.
Like, and
So
like
then,
this lady apparently lives completely alone with just the
yeah,
dog, which doesn't make any sense because I feel like I saw kids with her. I feel like she had kids like in the doorway when she was getting the dog, or was that another one? I don't know. All of these mediocre white ladies all merged together.
that was
I
the last lady, the dog lady.
Okay,
This lady is the flower pot
the
lady,
flower
the
lady. Okay,
very
yeah, yeah,
first
yeah,
lady. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then she's like, oh, the lamp. She picks it up, turns it off, and then she starts calling the dog again. Um, but then he's on the stairs, and then they have. It was another real moment because I feel like this would happen in most movies. People immediately like ah, and run, but they went for the stare
Freeze. Yeah,
and look multiple directions and then bolt for the door,
right.
which was awkward. But once again, I feel like we made a choice to make it this movie make you feel like you were there, you know. Like,
Yeah.
so then she runs for the door. He catches her and puts a gun into her face and starts tying her up. And she's begging for him to stop. And he tells her to shut up and it will be over soon. And he starts explaining, like how he has these proclivities and uh,
Mhm.
urges. And she tries to leave again. Uh, oh, he even said it was like her civic. She should feel like it's her civic duty. She's doing her civic duty to let him rape her, pretty much. But she
Yeah.
tries to jump out again, and so he starts choking her, and then um she kind of chills out, and he's like, okay. So he starts unzipping his jumper, and I was like, gross. But then he immediately pulls out a bag and like puts it over her head and just chokes her until she passes out, wakes her up, and does it again. And this time he pulls the bag off and she's dead, and there's blood running down her eyes. And then we wake up, we're back home, not wake up, just next scene. We were home for dinner for the family. Um, and we get congratulated, a toast, because guess who's church president? Oh, yay.
Well, it's such a weird position that they chose to put him in for this movie. Like president? Like what are you talking about? That's
I don't know. He handles the money for the reverend. In this church, the pastor doesn't know what he's doing. So he have to have a
that's
church
not actually
president.
that abnormal. Oh, yeah, so they have a president. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the position itself is not that abnormal. It's just weird that they chose to use the word president because it's
Yeah.
not the word you would use to describe that person at all. There's no presidencies in the fucking church. You aren't elected. Like,
So then he gets back home. Not back home. What am I thinking? He gets congratulated, says thank you, and then he's going out to his garage, his man cave. And we have pictures thrown around, tied up dolls, some drawings, and Susan immediately comes knocking on the door. Like, this man hasn't even had a chance to sit down yet, and is all like, "I'm lonely, come out." He's like, "Leave me alone, Susan. You
this
know I
whole
gotta
scene was so funny.
I gotta work late. I gotta work late. Why is the door locked?" And I was like, first of all, I'm sorry, Susan, you're being too desperate and you're not asking the right questions, Susan.
Right?
Your husband is a compliance officer. What?
What is he doing?
What extra paperwork? Even if he had extra paperwork, I work for a municipality, ma'am. You're not allowed to take that shit home. No,
Yeah,
no, ma'am.
uh,
No.
what can you possibly be doing in there? Does it cannot
Yeah.
like she's so fucking stupid, dude. She's
So
so stupid.
so
And I know
stupid.
that and it makes me so mad because I know that the real person was not stupid. So like
No.
y'all really
And
made her look like a vapid, like clingy idiot.
oh yeah. And this is where you'll I was going to talk about it more at the end on how the depictions, but how the and how I was going to kind of take it back of, yes, I commend him for saying, I'm not going to tell the real story, but here's what the man's based off. But in this movie, you make these aren't characters. He was
No,
a
they're
real person.
people.
He had a wife, and this is what you're depicting her as. Like,
It's
so
it's just
people are
disrespectful.
exactly, people are going to see this movie, and it doesn't matter if you say, well, it was fictionalized. This, and let's all also remember, whereas we're going to get our date soon, this is only 4 years after he was actually caught. So this woman is still very freshly
Right.
finding this out about her life,
Right.
and going through that, very actively going through that. Uh, and you put this depiction of her out as this needy, mindless woman who is just a nightmare. So I did hate that. And she's real hard to watch because she's so fucking annoying. So
And then she starts yanking on the doorknob and then like
yeah,
the door is like rattling and he's like, "Go away!"
yeah.
Like
And then she's kind of like, "Well, you want a drink?" No, she goes, "Don't forget to turn out the lights." Like, and then I was like, "Susan, do you want to die? Okay, go to fucking bed, Susan." Like, so then we cut, and he's driving around, listening to. Okay, so here's a part that I feel like never played through and was weird because I thought he was just listening to a police scanner, but then he like responds like he's talking to somebody. So then I was like, oh, he has a partner in this case. What's happening? But then he's walking up to a house with a bag, and he cuts the phone line, and a young couple comes up, and so it's just kind of like
I think I think he was like talking to like headquarters.
there he can't be on the clock committing murders. One, and compliance officers don't work overnight.
That's true. They don't. Yeah, but as far as being on the clock and committing murders, not really his act the like the real serial killer is not really his MO. He typically did like nighttime things, but realistically speaking, like you could like
You
they're
could,
not clocking him.
but it'd be
Like,
really stupid to take your work
well,
vehicle and all, and
he was not a
check in. I mean, think about that. We're gonna check in. I'm here, boss, at this exact address tomorrow morning. Two teens found at this. Doug, weren't you just at that address? Like,
listen,
that doesn't.
Dennis Rader was just smart enough until he wasn't anymore. He was actually very stupid there at the end, which this is supposed to be the resurgence time frame. So, realistically, yes, he was extremely sloppy and a fucking idiot at this point.
That's
So,
Well, if that's the case, but then I still feel like he never answered the radio any other time. And even then, in the future, a little
You're right.
girl's like, "You have a radio? I thought you said you weren't a cop." And he just kind of goes, "Oh, I have it just to listen." So we're establishing he shouldn't even have the radio.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
weird.
who were you talking to?
Just a plot hole.
So then it jumps. So he goes through the back door, through the front door. A young couple's coming up, hanky panky time, all over each other, going through the front door. My parents aren't home. But then I was like, dude, that guy looks 30.
Yeah.
What is she talking about? Her parents aren't home. What is happening? And then they like break a vase and stuff, and you're like, and she's like, she's doing that stupid cat and mouse thing of like being all over them and be like, no, respect my boundaries.
Ugh.
Don't follow me, which I
That
hate.
is
I
very
hate.
late 2000s.
Oh,
That's very
so
late
late
2000s.
2000s. So, oh my God. So, they get upstairs, they jump on the bed, and he pops out. He goes, get off her. And so they both jump up, and the guy is like, I don't even know her, man. And then the girl's like, what the fuck? I don't know his name, Chuck. And he was like, well, your dad's being weird. And she's like, that's not my dad. I was like, Chuck, how is that your response? Even if it was her father, are you raping her? You were just on top of her. How can
Yeah.
I don't know her.
How would that make it any better? How would
That
that
would
make
be
the situation any better at all?
right.
That's not
Like,
pleading your case. That
that's
just
not your response. Should be like, I'm gonna marry her, not the other way.
or even just like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, just start apologizing.
I'm just gonna scooch right by you there. I'm just gonna scooch right past you.
Just
I get out. Leave immediately. Jump out the goddamn window if you have to."
oh yeah, oh yeah. So oh, I've lost where I was. Okay, hold on. So okay, your dad's a freak. And then she's like, that's not my dad. So then they start arguing and pretty much just throwing each other under the bus of like, fuck you, you're an asshole. Kill this bitch. Like, so then he kind of looks at the guy and he's like, I don't know, I guess they're done arguing, throwing each other under the bus. So then he tries the tough guy move, like, you know what, bud? Just fucking shoot me then. And he goes, yeah, cool. Boom. Right in the head. And so she starts screaming and he just grabs her by the throat, throws her on the bed, starts choking her. And the boyfriend kind of stands up and he just shoots him again multiple times, giving her enough time to wake up. And he chokes her again. And then it's the next day. And you're kind of like, so I guess they're dead. And he's looking for more. He's back in his work truck. And I was like, oh, he's looking out for more horrible grass crimes. And a young girl walks up to his window and she's like, have you seen, she asked him if he's a dog catcher, and he's like, no, I'm a compliance officer. That's just a part of my job. First of all,
Then
don't
yes.
right. First of all, don't disrespect animal control. Okay, we work hard. Second of all, if that is part of your job, sir, then yes, you are the animal control officer for that area, asshole. But then she's like, I've been putting up posters. Have you seen my dog? He's like, oh, have you been putting up posters? I've seen those posters. You know, that's against the law too. And I was like, my God. And she's like, no, I didn't know that. He's like, but you know what? You're lucky. I got your dog right in the back. And I'm like, oh no, don't do it. Don't go back there.
That should have raised red flags because he's
Oh,
like, "No, that's not
honestly.
my job." But just kidding, it is. But
Yeah.
like, but I have the dog. Like,
Yeah.
what the? No red flags raised
None.
about any of this. Nobody has
None.
any kind of self-preservation or common sense.
No. So then she's like going straight to the back of the van. He's like, yeah, he's so excited to see you. Oh, do you? And then, okay, first of all, as soon as you open that door, I saw, well, there's no kennels in that van. Run away, bitch. But no, not her. Let's get closer.
She,
Let's
yeah,
look deeper in. and he bonks her on the head and chucks her in the van. And
Just
then
in front of God and everybody.
everybody,
Jesus
middle
Christ.
of the day, on the clock. I stand corrected. He will do
See?
crimes in the work van on the clock in broad
While being an
daylight.
asshole to everybody else about their supposed crimes
Right,
against the neighborhood.
right. Um, so I was like, oh, that's bold. He took her right in the work van. And then immediately, as he's closing the door, a friend walks up and is like, hey, what's in your van? And he's like, oh, nothing. Fuck all. There's a dog in there. There's a dog. I was going to take him home.
There's a dog. Yeah.
It's a dog. And the guy's like, okay. He's like, anyways, we're gonna be honoring you Sunday, so I just wanted to give you the heads up that you got to give a speech. And
Right.
he's like, oh yeah, cool, thanks. And he's like, well, I hope that dog finds a home. He's like, yeah, cool, thanks, Chuck, go away.
So weird. The whole interaction is so strange. And like she wakes up in the van and starts moving around and like making noise.
And
And
crying. He tells her stop being such a
yeah.
fucking crybaby.
Well, no, he tells her that later, but while he's talking to the guy says something about, "Oh, the dog really wants to get home" or something.
Yeah,
Like,
there's no
what
way
are
that
you
sounds like a
talking
dog.
about?
What
That's
is
not a
happening?
dog.
No. So he ends up driving off, and then she's crying. He's like, stop being such a fucking crybaby. And so she passes out, I guess. And then he sees like a little girl, like a 12-year-old walking down the street. And I was like, oh God, not the 12-year-old, please. And he's like, oh, having a grumpy bumpy day. And she's like, ew. And he eventually coaxes her into the van, telling her, oh, let me take you home and stuff. And then she's kind of like, this isn't the way to get home. And he's like, oh, it's a new way. And he locks the doors. And I was like, oh God, he's killing a child. He's doing a double in broad daylight. But then he pulls up to her house. And I was like, oh shit, he's not going to kill the girl. Okay. So the girl jumps out. And the mom's like, oh my God, where have you been? She's hugging her and stuff. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. But she is also coming off like a little like, thanks. Why did you have my daughter? And he was like, so I just wanted to let you know, what a piece of shit mom you are. Why would you let your
Yes.
daughter walk all by herself? Don't you know there's a killer out here? And
Jesus Christ.
she's like, fucking excuse you, you piece of shit. So then, oh, this is the mom. She's the woman who is like, you just have a billy club that makes up for your small dick or whatever. And I was like, oh, you're totally dying. You're gonna die.
Yeah,
You're gonna
she was
die.
saying something about how he's not a real cop. Like he's
Yeah,
nobody. Doesn't
yeah.
do anything. Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're dead.
Yeah.
But he chucked it right back at her, and then he went to writing some letters. Damn it. And he talks about how, and it's narrated over, he's running around. And um it they're showing photos of him posing with like teen girls in a grave. And then he stands up, which is so weird. So he's like naked and tied up, and she's naked and tied up, and he's taking photos. And then he stands up, and she's like crying, and she's like, please don't and stuff. And he's like, why? What have you done in life to deserve to live? And she's like, I'm a human. He's like, that's not enough. And then stabs her with the shovel. Uh, oh, and in this movie, I will say, they've really tried to throw in the gore. Like,
In
it's
their
so
late
much
2000s
blood.
way.
Yeah, like in unnecessary ways too.
Yeah.
Like over the top, not like I'm gonna make this scene look gross realistically. It's just like, hey, can we get a bigger blood explosion? Like,
Yeah. Bring the bucket.
yeah,
Like that's what it feels like. Bring the whole thing.
yeah. Like someone was back there being like, those
It's
are
not
getting weak,
realistic
Greg.
at all.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Not at all.
not at all. Uh, so then he stabs her with a shovel. So then he's walking, oh, then he's back in the van. He's coming into his home, and she's like, "Oh, do you want to, come chill with us?" And he's like, "No, I gotta take a shower." And she's like, "Oh, wait," and like runs over to him, and she's like, "Ew, you stink." And I was like, "Well, he just said he had to fucking take a shower, bitch. Like, you didn't have to come over here." And he kind of looks at her like that too. He's like, "Thanks." Like, and she's like, "Well, what were you doing?" And he's like, saving the city. And she's like, "Septic tanks again." I was like,
Jesus Christ.
what is this conversation? Go sit down. He said he needs a shower. You've established he stinks. He clearly doesn't want to talk about it. And he just like, no. And then she goes and he takes a shower. And then they're in church. He's getting sworn in. The wife is so proud. Everyone is so like, this is beautiful. And he's telling his speech, and he's crying. He's like, "Oh, this is just everything I ever wanted in life." And then he's back home and he's fixing a tent. So you're like, okay, you're probably going camping. And he has a Boy
Which like
Scouts.
he has it like in the living room.
Yeah,
He's
he's
like
fixing
setting
it
up
in the
the
living
tent
room.
like in the living room.
Yeah,
If you
before
don't get
you
in the
know.
backyard, like get the fuck out of my house.
So she's like, she comes over and sits down. And this is another, just like, everybody's really bipolar in this movie and no setup for these emotions. She goes from being this like, I'm so happy you're home all the time wife, to suddenly in this scene, she's very, where are you going? I know you've been missing, like, just,
Yeah.
and he's like, I've told you like 5 times I'm going to like Lincoln Park or something like that. And she's
Yeah,
just like,
total gaslighting. Total
oh yeah.
gaslighting.
Oh yeah. And she's
He
just
didn't
kind
tell
of
her
like,
anything.
oh,
He's going with
probably
the
not.
Boy Scouts. He's going
Yeah.
with the Boy Scouts. They have a camping thing or whatever, and she thinks about it for a second, and then she goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I just forgot." And it's like, girl, if you don't
No.
start writing things down or something, so
But
like
then
you can.
she still also has, so he's definitely gaslighting her, but she's still very much in this mood of like, well, you're never home. It's almost like she wants to accuse him of cheating, like,
Right, but
you
she
haven't
doesn't
been,
quite
but they
get
haven't,
there.
she doesn't get there, and they haven't set that up at all. It went straight from, I am the proudest, I love you so much, look at me now, to, where have you been? And she's like,
Yeah,
well, why
it's
don't,
so
and then
weird.
she asked a really dumb question, which I was like, what? She goes, why don't you take the girls? His girls, one, look like they're like 16 and 17. Two, it's a Boy Scout trip. How would they go? Why would they go? What time would they spend with their father? He's watching what, 30 boys? Something like that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then but he doesn't even go down that route, which is a perfectly like reasonable. He says it one time, like, it's the Boy Scouts. And she's like, well, they still need to spend time with their father. And he's like, well, you didn't give me a son. And I was like, wow, wow,
Jesus Christ.
wow. We went straight for sexism and extreme gaslighting. Like, it's her fucking fault. He has to be a camp counselor because she didn't give him her son. Like, and oh man. So then she gets pissed and she's like, you're never around for your girls, and kind of storms off. And he's like, well, going to get in the car now. So
Right. He's just like, I'm done. Packing
yeah,
everything up.
he give two shits. He's like, great, glad you got done talking to me. Uh, so then another murder happens, but she's on the couch watching a TV. So, and they're talking about another murder has happened. Um,
And one of the girls is next to her, and one of the girls is like on the phone in the kitchen,
yes.
and like they're talking about it, and the the older one, the younger one is concerned about everything. She's like, "Oh my god, we could get got," basically, and then the older one yells from the kitchen and was like, "Nobody's taking you." I was like, "God damn, Jesus Christ! You didn't have to rag on your sister that hard. There was
Yeah.
no reason for you to do that."
So then the mom is like, well, get off the phone and get your butt over here. I want you to see this.
Right.
And she comes over and she's watching and she's like, well, Jessica's little brother fell and broke his arm. And I was kind of like,
Today, yeah, she said today he had an
yeah.
accident or
And
something.
she says
Like
it,
such
but
a weird thing.
she said it in such a weird, like, braggy way. I was like, what kind of delivery was, what? what was the message behind that? Are you
Yeah, like, she was excited that this kid,
Yeah.
like, hurt himself. It was yeah, it was very strange, and then the mom was like, "But wait, he's in the Boy Scouts. He
Mhm.
should have been, like, out with your dad." And both the girls are like, "He wasn't on the camping trip. That was canceled 2 weeks ago." And she just pauses, and then she kinda laughs at herself, and she's like, "Oh, no, he's with, like, the higher ups. He's at a, like"
Yeah.
what did she
It's a
call it?
work event. She was like, "Oh, it's just a work event." Which is also a very, like, early 2000s wife thing to do of, like, don't let the children see, keep it all
Yeah,
hidden. So, now she definitely thinks he's fucking somebody else. But what's he
right.
doing? He's At first I was like, "What is this? An old farmhouse?" But then it was apartments. And he's knocking on the door and I was like, "Oh, maybe this is the person he was talking on the phone with, on the radio with." But no, it's the
Right,
prostitute. He's hunted down the prostitute and I was like, "Oh, bitch, you going down." And she's kind of like, "Okay, I'm really sorry. I'll get you your money back." And he's like, "No, I don't want my fucking money back. I want my services." And she's like, "I have a husband. He's sleeping. He doesn't know I do this." And he's like, "Nope.
right.
You're a slut. I'm taking it now. I'm telling your husband." Pretty much pushes his way through, grabs her by the face, drags her to the bedroom, wakes up. I thought she was saying husband just to protect herself, but she really did have a husband in the house. And she wakes him up, and this motherfucker's kind of like, "What's happening?" And he's like, "Just want to let you know your wife's a hooker." He's like, has her in a headlock. Okay, she's clearly in distress, and he stops looking at the giant man manhandling his wife and goes to her, "You've been cheating on me, bitch!" Like,
Yeah, Jesus
and
Christ.
she's like, "No, you fucking donut! He's attacking us!" And then he's like, "Oh, well, fuck you!" And so then he gets shot in the face. Uh, and then she is immediately like crying and "My husband," and "Dear God, be awake." And he's talking a lot of shit to her, and then he ends up just punching her lights out. Uh
Well, he's, like, talking to her, and then he starts having visions of, like, his daughters.
Not yet. Not
Oh,
yet.
that was after, sorry.
Yep. So then lights out, it goes, screen goes black, comes back, he's now wearing the boyfriend's outfit, which I was like, come on. That man was way smaller than him. That man did not have clothes that fit him. Stop it. But he's like, "Your husband," she's like on the bed, super bloody, and has obviously been like badly beaten. Um, but she's alive still, and he's kind of talking to her like, "Thanks for the clothes. Where's your car keys? In your purse. Look at it this way. You have a new lease on life now. I helped you." And he's about to leave, and she's kind of like, "Fuck you, you monster." And he's like, "Oh, I was gonna fucking let you live." So then he starts choking her. And while he's choking the shit out of her, she kind of turns into his daughter and she's like, "Why are you
Mhm.
doing this, daddy?" And
Yeah.
he's kind of like, "Oh shit." And she starts crying. But it even had me in the moment being like, because he like picks her up and everything. And he's running her out. And I was like, wait, did he hallucinate? Was it his daughter? But then once he gets her outside, it's the hooker. And she's like,
Right.
"What's happening at this point? Like, am I dying? Am I not dying? I'm outside now." But he's so freaked out, he's just kind of like, I gotta go, good luck on life. So uh while he's going on his way home, he's narrating again. And da, 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 da. He's driving in frustration, kind of picturing things, and he gets pulled over, and I was like, "Oh." So then he sees in his rear view the cop is being like a dick back to him, and I was like, "Oh, taste spoonful of sugar, buddy boy."
Right.
uh so he is feeling very hostile because he's like, "You don't talk down to me, you know. I'm your equal. I'm not a fucking child." But he sees in his rear view mirror a car coming. So he's like, "You know what? We are equals. And I'm so sorry I've caused you this distress." And the cop's kind of like, "What's happening?" And he just starts rolling up his window, and the cop's like, "Hello." And so the cop kind of like grabs onto the doorknob to open it and like force him out of the car. And he pushes the door and slings the cop into the traffic. And I was like, oh my God. And he drives off, and then they show the cop. Okay. Yes, car accidents can be very bad, but this is once again where it was like, come on. It looks like the makeup they did for him wasn't necessarily bad, but it looked like he had been dragged 90 feet, you know?
Or like
Like his,
burned. He looked
oh
like a
yeah,
burn victim.
his whole face was just gone and blood. And the people are like, we're going to get you help. Anything,
That man
maybe
is
his head would be
dead.
bleeding. Like, one. But he's alive, like, like, so yeah. So with those injuries, you would definitely be dead. Two, the way that car hit him, those wouldn't be the injuries. So this, once again, it was just like, what was the point
Get
of
the
the
bucket.
gore? It didn't make sense. You just added it to add it. So then we get detectives are in his home, and I was like, fuck. But in my mind, and I can't lie, by this point in the movie, I was like, great, detectives are here. We're almost through it.
I know.
Right.
It was so hard to get through this movie.
So detective are in a home, and I'm like, oh shit, they're in his home. And then he drives up, and I was like, oh, is he gonna walk in on the detectives? But no, he parks his truck in front of the house. The detectives walk out, just kind of stand there, and then he comes out of the bushes in the backyard straight to his little garage. What happened to the truck, people? Did the cop, are they blind? Do they not know what his truck is? Like, so then he's pissed, obviously, and throwing things around because for him, he just fucked up. He left a hooker alive and possibly a cop that he just pushed into traffic. He doesn't know because he just drove away. So he's in a full like panic at this point. And then it goes to Susan crying in bed. So detective has left. Detectives called her back. We don't really know what's happening on the phone other than her being like, no, I don't know. Don't tell me. Ah, like she just got told he's a murderer or that he died. She starts crying, and the daughter's like, what's happening? And she grabs the phone, and she's like, no. And then and these were the worst cry faces I've ever seen in my life.
Not a tear. There was
Not
not
a
a
tear.
tear
And I
shed
couldn't
through the
even
whole
tell.
movie.
The daughter's was a little better, at least as a cry face she was giving. Susan, I couldn't tell if she was about to laugh or cry. It was very like, it was so bad. So he shows up, pretty much gives his confession. I'm sorry, I'm a bad man. I can't be here. I'm not turning myself in. Um, and this is where my notes start getting real fucking lazy because this is the point the movie should have ended. Okay, it should have went to black. BTK confesses in words, roll credits. Okay, but no, they kept fucking going, and it just got so much worse. So, oh, and then while I was looking at his face in this one, I was kind of like, this man has like no chin or jaw line at all.
Well,
Like his
if you
neck.
yeah, if you look closely at his neck, he has a lot of scarring there. And it's because he was a stuntman, professional
Mm.
stuntman, and he was attempting to, I think, show someone else a stunt involving fire to teach them how to do it, and it went absolutely horribly wrong.
Oh
So
shit.
the actor himself, yeah, if you look closely at his neck, it is really, so that's why he kind of almost looks like a turtle, and it's because all of this was burned like very badly. So like
So
that's
I'm a
why he's
terrible
got that like
person.
stocky. Well, I mean, you didn't know, like,
Well, this is why we
and
shouldn't say things like that, though. Lessons
I didn't know
learned.
that either until I realized he was Jason, and I was like, "What's wrong with his neck too?" Like I was like,
Yeah,
"Something is going on there." So I literally Googled like the
yeah,
actor's neck, and that's where I found out that, oh yeah, he was involved in like this really horrible accident. So yeah, I had the same thought of like, "What's going on there?"
yeah. I was kind of like, hmm. So,
Oops.
so he runs out the back. Susan runs out the front, and she's crying, and the popo are coming, and she's like, he was here. And
Is this the point to where her and the daughter are having the fight too?
almost.
Or
We
was this
aren't
later?
there
Okay.
yet. We're gonna see it then shoots to him of being like leaning
He's like
against the
running through
house.
the woods.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, first he like does a long like lean on the house, and I was like, you should probably go. You know, like
Yeah, what are you doing?
you should
What
probably
the
run. Then uh the cops are talking to the mom, and he's like, I couldn't even imagine what you're going through. She's like, no, you couldn't. You marry a man for 30 years. You have no idea. He was like, you're right, but you need to think of the victims. Like, immediately starts berating her on how, like, bet they feel worse, bitch. Tell us where your husband is.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Where I was like, fucking wow. Uh, but the mom is just kind of like, she kind of wants to help the cops, but she's also kind of like, he's my husband, he's your father. Because the girls start kind of talking shit about him, and she's not having that. And then the daughter breaks into her great monologue of how daddy never loved us because we were boys. He never looked at us. I
I mean,
hate
and
him.
she's not wrong, but then the other sister is like, listen, the other sister, the younger one, has no emotion through the entire movie. Her
None.
face is just blank. Even when
Yeah.
they're sitting on the couch, the detectives are in the background. Mom is breaking down. Older sister is breaking down. They're holding each other, all three of them, and she is just like laying
Yeah.
her head on her shoulder, like,
Yeah.
what? What? How did that make it into the movie?
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, how?
It's it's not great. But it is a moment of, once again, where like this was terrible writing
Yes.
because you didn't set that up in the movie, though. Like, yeah, probably that is probably what her life was. But all throughout this movie, you've shown us nothing but girls giggling in kitchens and mom so happy to see him. And now, just like this, dad's been a horrible fucking person. What
What?
is happening?
Yeah, it's like they wanted this like family like storyline, but then they didn't actually write it
Yeah.
in there at
And
all.
then once again, we could go back to the idea that they were possibly trying to go for, of we are in his head, so we're jumping from in his head to reality to back in his head. But then you didn't do it properly because none of us realized that's what the fuck's happening. So still bad, poorly done. Um. So then, uh, oh thank God he's been caught, because I was like, oh fuck yeah, he's been caught. We can we go now? Can we go now? But then he's in an interrogation room, which is clearly somebody's just like sunroom, like with the beautiful glass doors, and it's all of like a 2x4 size room. Like they're face to face in these beautiful wicker chairs.
Uh,
And
uh,
you're just like, that's not an interrogation room, guys. That's your mom's living room. Get out of there. uh so then he's like, the guy's like about to interrogate him. He's like, we got your DNA evidence. And he's like, well, is that camera on? Because let's just lay it all out on the table. And the guy's like, really? Okay, yeah, great. Let's lay it on the table. And then he starts repeating himself. So then you're kind of like, what's happening? And then he wakes back up and the girls are laughing in the kitchen. And I'm like, what in the fucking Groundhog Day? I swear to God, this movie starts over. I'm out. I'm just out. We're just going to go from there. And I'm like, sorry, I didn't finish it. It's that fucking bad. He goes into his garage, and this is where and he's doing his paperwork, and this is where you're supposed to feel like, oh, he's been so, all he thinks about are his fantasies and their plans and how they could go wrong, and that's how his head works. So the whole movie's supposed to just be about like how his head works. But you more just go,
what the fuck?
what
Yeah.
what's happening, like. So
Yep.
that's it. Roll credits. That's how they fucking decided to end it. So like I said, should have ended where he walked into his family saying, I'm so sorry, and run out, show the cops chasing him. Roll credits. Okay. I would have given you more points. You went off. the rocker with this one. I agree with Rotten Tomatoes. This is a 10% movie.
Yeah, 1 out of 10.
Yeah, this is not good, and it's not even one of those movies where you could be like you said before, a bad to good, like I'm watching right now, Idle Hands. Fucking classic, like there was nothing to really pull out of this movie other than like just nothing.
Yeah, it's just bad.
It's just bad. So now we'll go to, as we said before, the director had already said himself that this was more fictional movie. So let's talk about the real BTK killer, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, which is a moniker he gave himself. His name was Dennis Rader. He was born in 1945 in Kansas. He was an elder brother of 4 boys, where he would live a pretty much typical middle-class life. People in documentaries that grew up with him said the parents were very nice. His dad worked at a railroad. His mom also worked. He was known for wanting to spend his summers hunting and boating. People described him as kind of like a middle of the road kid. He wasn't hated or picked on in any way. He was a part of activities, but wasn't like the most popular. You wouldn't like necessarily pick him out of a crowd. They just kind of called him like a regular kid.
Yep.
But there were some rumors that he liked hanging small animals in the woods. But in the one documentary I saw, the friend who actually was like his friend said that those were rumors that went around school, but he personally never saw any of that stuff. But BTK himself would say that when he was a child, one of his favorite memories was watching his grandmother kill chickens on her farm. Yep. And then when he was 12, this is what he considers like his defining moment. A teacher would embarrass him in school, so he decided to follow her home. And he watched her through a window where he had some rope and ended up ejaculating, and that was kind of like the clicking moment for him. And he always kind of described himself as like, it's just how he was. He just knew that was where his mind went. So then he became having more dreams and fantasies of rape and torture, and he would end up going to university and then joining the Air Force, and then by 1971 he was back in Kansas, where he would marry a local girl. But he would still be reading Detective Magazine. And so when I first heard this, I thought he just like seeing crime scene. But then I saw what Detective Magazine was, and it was porn. It was a magazine for people who like bondage. Yeah. Which, fair enough. The pictures did look pretty hot. They showed some of them on the documentary I watched. And then this is when he started creating his drawings too of what his fantasies, which you can look up if you want to Google them. They're out there. He began studying murders to kind of, because he wanted to perfect his fantasy. And then finally in 1971 he felt he was ready, and it was the poor Otero family that would be his first victims. So his motive was pretty much go cut the phone line and go in through the back door. He would say, and you can also look up him talking about this in court, and the coldest, most like,
yep,
I feel like we say this about a lot of killers, but he really is just like, yeah, it was a Sunday. I walked through the back door. I threw a bag over the wife's head. Like, he's so nonchalant about it. Like
there's no enjoyment for him.
Oh no.
Because a lot of them get enjoyment of talking about it after the fact, and like that's part of the sexual fantasy for them as well, if it is sex based. But they almost relish in retelling the stories. And for him, it's like he didn't necessarily relish it. He just told it as it was.
Yeah.
Like he was like, yeah, XYZ.
Yeah.
Like there's no enjoyment outward enjoyment that he's getting out of recounting these things that he's done.
No.
It's very disorienting to
Yeah.
watch him talk about it.
Oh yeah. Um but he would torture and kill the family. He would
Including 2 children.
I'm getting there.
Sorry.
A mother and father strangled. It is even said that he put bags over their heads to strangle them. And then he choked out the daughter. She was 11. Then he goes and grabs the 9-year-old boy, drags him into the room, puts a bag over his head, and sits in a chair and watches him suffocate. By then, the girl had woken up, so he dragged her downstairs and hung her in the basement and tied her up. She was 11. Terrible. He would then rush home because he wanted to make it home before his wife got off of work. He would then take a small break, but he would see a 21-year-old Kathy Bright getting her mail and decide that is his next victim. He would sneak into her house, but he didn't realize the brother was also off of school and back home. So he said when he went in with guns, and he had the brother tie her up. And then this is what I think this would hurt more too, because you have to remember when he's doing these interviews, when you see him talking, he's in court. The families are right behind him, hearing them. This is how my family member died. And he said this so not just nonchalantly, but it was just like he goes, I had the gun. I don't know. I either tied her up or I had him tie her up. It was something like that. And it was just so like that moment was that you killed 2
Inconsequential.
people, and that was inconsequential to him. Like
Yep.
crushing.
Yep.
So then he tied them up, but the brother would end up getting loose, and when he tried to run, he would be shot and go down. He got shot in the head. He would then try and strangle her, but then she got loose and was started to fight back, so he stabbed her. The brother then jumped up and ran, and he got out into the street. So then he was kind of at that point like, fuck, I'm gonna get caught. He cleaned up real quick and just left. And this is where he wasn't an intelligent killer. He was really just fucking lucky. Unfortunately, this fucker got not off, but didn't get caught because the brother's injuries caused him to really only be able to say he was a white guy and he was kind of tall and just not much else.
Yeah. Well,
Which
it's kind
is
of that thing of like people still even today like to put a lot of stock between eyewitness accounts.
well,
But the thing is when you're in this type of fight or flight or freeze moment, a lot of times you are not taking in information,
yeah,
right? You're not taking your brain is physically not capable of taking in the details of like what's happening to you. Some people can. Some people will tell you exactly. Their brain like takes a picture of it, like a recording of it, and they can pull it exactly from memory, but not everyone can do that. So
yeah,
that's why eyewitness accounts are so it's 50-50 on if it's going to fucking give you anything or not for
yeah.
something that traumatic.
Well, and also I think this town isn't that small. It's probably more of
Right.
like a medium-sized town. So we have to be honest with ourselves that even if he could be like, oh, he was white, he had a mustache, he had glass, he didn't know this man. They still wouldn't have had a
Right.
name. And this is the 70s.
Right.
There's no like huge database. So I think we wish this boy could have said more, but I think even if he could
It's
have,
not his fault
it wouldn't have been. No,
that he
absolutely
couldn't.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But soon another killer would be given credit for his crimes, and that is when he was like, oh, fuck that. And he sent his first letter. But as soon as he sent the letter, he went dormant for 3 years. Then in 1977, a woman named Shirley with 2 small children would be attacked and strangled as her kids banged on the door, trying to get to her. And unfortunately, due to the time difference of these kills, they didn't connect them at first.
Right.
And then 9 months later, he would complete what he called his perfect one. He cut the line, snuck in the back door, and when he came in, he attacked her. Her name was Nancy, and told her, this is where the movie kind of, he does take from real life in the movie. So that first kill is more like what happened to Nancy. He tells her, I'm just going to rape you. I have these needs and stuff. He handcuffs her to a bed and strangles her with his belt multiple times, and would jerk off into her negligee. And he was so proud of himself for this kill, he decided to call the cops himself and tell him where they could find the body. 2 months later, he wrote to the news station demanding attention for the murders. And he also sent poems and a nice drawing of what he did to Nancy, which they showed on the documentary. And I was just like, oh, it's one thing to show his fantasy ones, but like that one, that was the victim. Like, don't do that. Even in documentary, like, too much, man. Too much. So, God, my nerves are like on fire. He would continue to write the letters. He'll write letters for 7 years, but he won't kill again. He decided during this time that he would go back to school and kind of start perfecting his stalking abilities. But unfortunately, he would come back, and Maureen Hinge, a neighbor that was like 4 doors down, would be taken. He took her body. He kills her like his normal MO. Suffocates her, takes the body to the church where they have a nice little photo shoot, which is sick, because she was a deacon, and posed and photographed the dead body tied up, and then dumped her in a ditch, where she would be found 9 days later. He would go into the woods. So this is where he was a Boy Scout counselor, and he would go on these camping trips with them. He would, when they were busy doing something, he would sneak off into his own area of the woods. And they showed these photos, and I was kind of like, okay. He very much like tucked it and everything. But tied himself, just rope bunnied himself up, had a little button for his Polaroid. He put a girl mask on him, and they think he said these photos that he would take of himself would actually be, and the detective magazines kind of helped with his taking these long breaks, because he was able to stay in his fantasy world. But those pictures, his big fat hairy belly kind of kills it, even with the girly mask and the tuck dick, like, it's not attractive.
No.
So I was like, they're kind of funny pictures. Then unfortunately he would strike again in 1986. He attacked Vicky Waverly and left her tied to the bed for her husband to find. He then would go dormant for 4 years, where another body, 62-year-old Dolores Davis, would be found. He strangled her and took her body to dump again. He would then he'd go dormant, and during that dormant time would be his longest dormant time, and this is when he would be the compliance officer, and he enforced codes workers. And he was known to want to flex his muscle. He was that jackass the wannabe cop, And then in 2004, a newspaper would run an anniversary article, kind of like, remember these deaths, still unsolved. And he decided, I'm going to write more letters. It's not over yet, bitches. And started sending cops on fun scavenger hunts with dolls and trophies and like cereal boxes. But then
the cereal box thing was especially stupid. That was especially stupid.
Oh, this whole, how he gets caught, I'm like, what the fuck?
It's so
idiot. This idiot. Get this. Messages the cops and goes, if you guys promise, tell me the truth, guys. If I send you a disc, could you trace it?
Yeah, floppy disk. He's like, do you have the capabilities? Do you have the technology
Be
to trace
honest.
a copy?
Pinky square, guys. Pinky square it.
And at this time, he was
he was the head of some council at
He was.
church
He was.
at this point. So the church, Lutheran, if I remember correctly, it was Lutheran church. But Lutherans are, fuck,
Yeah. So of
I'm
course the
not
cops
surprised.
respond going, "Oh yeah, we can't do that. Send the disc away, bud."
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
It's the top of our day.
Yeah. They're like, "Oh, we could never trace that. Mm-mm. Pinky swear. Could never do it." So he, like a fucking idiot, sends the disc, which they are very easily able to pull off uh his name, where he
Well,
works.
they pull it. They
Like,
pull when they pull the document on there. It was he went to church and he wrote it and saved it at church, and
mm-hmm.
they were able to pull what the church was, and then they were able to pull his first name, Dennis.
Yeah.
And, and again, he's like the head of some committee at
Yeah.
this one specific church, and his name is Dennis.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
fucking A, Dennis. Fucking A. So,
Jesus.
of course, uh he gets caught, and he does. He immediately confesses to everything. He's like, let's not waste any time. So
Yeah,
he didn't get a trial because he confessed everything, but he did have to go in front of a judge, because even when you confess,
for
you have to
sentencing.
stand in front of everybody for sentencing and say
Yep.
what you did. And so he went through it in brutal fucking detail in front of their families. And then the families got to stand up and give their testimony and their fuck yous and their everything. And that was even more heartbreaking and brutal.
Yeah. And
So
I
he
think if
is
I remember correctly, they tracked the church, but to be like extra sure, I think they got one of his daughter's like pap smears or something from the college that she was going to, and they used that DNA to match it to the DNA that they had of the BTK killer. So like they assumed that this
crazy.
has to be this Dennis, right? But you
Yeah.
can't necessarily go in with that like guns blazing without like a super solid. So if I remember correctly, it was like a pap smear that his daughter had completed like at college that they technically could subpoena. And
Yeah.
so that's how they really said absolutely it's this fucker right here.
It's like, I'm really happy they caught him. Don't get me wrong, but gross. You
Right?
shouldn't
Like
be
that's
able to
such a
do that.
strange I don't even know how I would think that. Like how did they even get to that conclusion of like, oh, she had a pap smear? Like
Right?
where do you this is some like
Well,
Bones
I think they
TV show
did.
shit.
Back in the day, I think you did have to do a physical to get into school, and that was a part of a woman's physical.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But it's still like
but
how do you make
cops
that
should
connection?
not be able to subpoena that, and ever. I don't.
Hello. Uh
Yeah.
our political landscape right now. We're headed straight back there.
Okay. So, um, he's still in jail today, obviously. Now,
Yep.
last week, it's technically
Yep.
2 weeks ago, he in jail was heard over the phone talking about a barn, and they got his diary, and they're now connecting him to more girls. A girl kidnapped from a laundromat who was also found choked, so his MO. Um, and his daughter is helping the police in any way she can. So she's been doing some interviews talking about if he did it,
Yeah, no,
nail him to the
his
fucking wall, and that he's a
yeah.
pathetic, toothless old man now, and she can't recognize him.
Yeah, no, his daughters like immediately, like as
Yeah.
soon as the cops showed up to say anything, they immediately she was like, just whatever you need. Maybe that's how they got the pap smear. Maybe she
Maybe.
told them, "Hey,
Well,
I don't know for certain, but his one of his daughter in particular has always been extremely vocal of her total hate and disdain and just ostracizing of her father for this. There was never a moment from her like there typically is of family members of being like, I cannot believe he did this. Like, that's not my dad. Like, there was never a moment of that for her. It was as soon as it came out what happened, she was immediately like, you're a fucking piece of shit. I fucking hate you. Like,
there's never been anything else, which I 100% commend her for, because like that's your
Yeah.
dad. Like,
Oh,
for
yeah.
her to have immediately turned it like that, like there had to have been some shit happening in the home where she's just an exponentially good fucking person. Where she was like, nope, 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 nope. I don't want anything to do with you.
Okay, so she wrote um this year, just released January 29th, A Serial Killer's Daughter. It chronicles her
That's
horror and
right. I
anger.
forgot. Yep.
Um, so she says they found out I had an annual pap smear and they got a warrant for my medical records. She says it
Oh, that's
would
right.
have been
Okay.
nice if somebody had asked. I would
Oh,
have
so they didn't
willingly
ask.
give it. Yeah, so you're right. They totally took it with a warrant, and but she says I would have willingly given it though if they had
Yeah.
asked. Um,
Yeah.
and she says it's taken 14 years to even be able to talk about her father's secret life. Um, so yeah, I would be interested maybe seeing a movie if they ever made a movie out of her book, like everything from her perspective, which I
Kind
don't
of like
know.
the Ted Bundy from the girlfriend perspective kind of thing.
I never watched any of
I
the Ted
didn't watch it
Bundys,
either, but I know that
so
it
I don't know. But
exists.
yeah, but yeah,
I didn't even. Mm-mm.
yeah, and I've seen them, and I'm kind of like, we'll probably have to cover those one day too. But I don't, Ted Bundy's just never interested me. Like,
I
I feel like people give him too much hype almost. I feel like which
Yeah,
is
there's a
this is going to be a hard statement, so try not to hold it against me. There's more interesting killers than him. Like, I feel like there
I
are
get what you're trying to
worse
say.
killers. There are more brutal killers. There are
Yeah, they
like,
are B.T.K, Bundy, Gacy, Son of Sam, and the co-ed killer. Those are like top, and Toy Box Killer. Those are like
mm-hmm,
top killers and serial killers that people talk about to death.
yeah,
Um and part of that is because of the time frame that they all happened and existed in. Because if you go back super early, if you've watched Mindhunters, it does a decent job of explaining. It's really fictionalized, but it does a decent job of explaining how there wasn't a term for these people.
yeah,
Like, there wasn't psychology being done. There weren't, like, now anytime you see on TV, even fictional TV, where they're talking about some type of killer that's done multiple kills, they create a profile on him. They have a whole file about, from a psychological perspective, about what might make him tick and what he might be looking for. Like, they didn't used to have that at these time frames, especially when like Bundy was really active and Son of Sam. Like, during those time frames, it just wasn't well known.
yeah,
So being caught and the information becoming essentially just a media circus, and the way especially America latches on to sensationalism, true crime, like, media just completely blew up
yeah,
because of these very specific men who were doing these killings. So it's not that I don't find these particular stories interesting, it's that they've been done to death. There is
mm,
no new information. I
no,
already know everything that has happened. Um, uh, so it's like it's just, it is what it is. Like, and the media machine keeps churning shit out from them.
yeah,
Like, but there's like 5 new fucking things about Bundy.
yeah,
Zach Efron played Bundy, and like I just have no
no interest
interest
in
in
it,
it. And
none.
part of that is because I already know everything, and the other part of that is my consumption of true crime media in the past like 3 4 years has totally shifted, because it's just kind of gross the way that we've sensationalized it, which is kind of ironic coming from me, because my other podcast has a true crime component,
Yeah.
but we don't focus on newer cases. We don't focus on the super hyped ones like Bundy, and we focus mainly on like heists and weird shit like that. Like, we're not focused on telling random people's stories that are either the people themselves are still alive or their family is still alive. It's weird. And you still get into that with like BTK because like you said
Yeah.
his daughter just wrote a book. And like
Yeah.
obviously she's willing to talk about it now, but that book just came out this year.
Yeah.
People have been hounding BTK content since he was arrested, before he was arrested.
Yeah.
So it's like she's lived this entire time. I wouldn't be surprised if she like changed her fucking name. I
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't be like associated with it all. And she's lived this entire time of there being 50 million fucking podcasts of idiots, fucking Karen and Georgia from My Favorite Murder, giggling and talking about these things that her dad did.
Yeah.
Gut wrenching. So no, I don't want to watch anything about those people. I want to watch and listen to stuff about people telling their stories of like the family telling the story of the deceased person
Yeah.
or the people who got away telling their story of like what happened and how they got away.
Yeah.
I want to listen to those people telling
Which
their story.
that show, it, now I can't even think of
What
the name of
show?
it. It's Survivors. It's
I survived blank or
yes.
whatever. Yeah, that
Yeah.
one's really good.
Oh my god, those mostly women's
It's mostly
stories.
women.
It's mostly women. Oh my god. I there was one that's always stuck with me where she was attacked and kidnapped, shot in the head, blinded, still ran from him in the Florida Everglades. She ran through the Florida Everglades barefoot, half naked and blinded.
She had God on her
Survived it.
side.
Yes, I was just like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. But that's what I want to hear about.
Like,
That's what I want.
yeah.
That's what I want. Like
Yeah.
I even my documentaries that I watch, I just finished watching like There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. And like that one is interesting because it's about the family trying to prove that Diane did not do this even though it resulted in like 8 deaths,
Mm,
including her own.
yeah.
So it's not just like talking about like it's not some floating head with a
Yeah.
psychology degree talking about this thing that happened. It's her family and the family of the other deceased explaining what happened and trying to make sense of everything.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to hear any more psychoanalysts of fucking Bundy or the co-ed killer.
Which, when you
Like we
talk about
know.
psychoanalysts, that's one thing I also hate that these movies always tend to do. And this one definitely fucking did it. When you hear about him, go watch an actual documentary, listen to him speak and stuff. He he's not mentally ill. He even will tell you that like he is a killer, yes, and probably like psychotic, but even in this, they try to play like he's double personality. He's not with reality. No,
Yeah, you
he is with reality. He knows he's with reality. Like, don't. I did feel like almost like giving them a cop out. And it's almost like they do it for the public of like, because we have to have that reasoning. We have to be able to say, I know why people do this, so I can protect myself because of it. You can't, because he was not abused. He was not shit on as a human being. He grew up perfectly normal. He was born wrong. People died because of it. He's in jail now. There was no outside happening that we could have changed in some way for him. It's how he
yeah.
worked.
Yeah, there's no medication that he could have been put
There was
on.
nothing. And it
Yeah.
had nothing to do with, oh, if somebody would have just noticed and got him into therapy. No, wouldn't have helped. And don't put that on that community. Like, we got
Yeah,
to
don't
stop with this
stop.
whole fucking narrative of it's the disabled people. Like,
every single time somebody does something bad. And we see it right now, we're seeing it most often with
yes.
shooters. But it's always, everyone always plays into the mental health, and all it's doing is it's furthering the push to bring back state-run mental health hospitals, which somebody anytime I tell anybody this, they look at me like I'm fucking nuts. But I have a bipolar diagnosis. Have the capability to be literally psychotic,
Mm.
hallucinations, the full gambit, like visual and auditory. I have it all. Dissociation, being a fucking psycho, mania, all of it. I have the capability to do that if I'm not on my meds. I am diligent with my meds. I never miss my meds if I don't have to at all. Um, but I have the formal diagnosis for that. I don't have a formal diagnosis for autism. I know I'm autistic. I will never go and get a formal diagnosis for autism because I
No.
already have the bipolar 1, which is the worst bipolar diagnosis to have. And I know that that's accurate. That's already a mark on my record. If they start bringing back state run mental health hospitals and they start pushing mentally ill, what they would classify as mentally ill people in
Mhm.
there, I would be one of the first ones to go and I would lose custody of my kid.
Yep.
Because that's the narrative that they are pushing out currently, is that anyone who does anything outside of the societal norms must be mentally ill, and because they're mentally ill they are not safe to be around the general populace, so they
Yep.
need to be in prison or they need to be in a hospital.
Yep.
And it's the same shit with all these serial killers. Everybody psychoanalyzes them to death
Yeah.
to try to figure out where the breakdown is, what is the diagnosis that they should have. And there's not always a diagnosis.
No.
Some people are just goddamn evil.
Yeah.
Maybe it's narcissism, but that's not something that you can
Maybe it's Maybelline.
treat. Like, you can't treat a personality disorder
No, it's
other than talk therapy. Like, you
yeah.
cannot give people meds to regulate a personality disorder like narcissism or antisocial. That's literally something in your brain. Like, uh, there's nothing that you can do other than getting them into therapy. But the therapy isn't always going to work. And doing
No.
therapy with a narcissist, it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
They will just turn that around and Jonah Hill it and use it to manipulate more people.
Yeah.
That's not all of them. Not everybody who has NPD or antisocial is like that. But the capabilities are there. But you can't just apply that label to every single person who
Yeah.
does something outside of the societal norms
Yeah.
and throw your hands up and be like, oh, guess we should lock them up.
It's the
Like, stop
crazies.
doing that.
Yeah, it's not.
I
Because it
fucking hate
does,
it.
and this is why it puts so many more people in danger, because
Right.
you get situations like people who are hand flappers in public. They're nervous, they start hand flapping. Well, now you've put in society's mind of the crazies are who kill people. That one's crazy, just start shooting. And now this innocent person's been killed because you don't even know anything about mental illness. You don't want to. You just see a freak and start shooting.
Right.
And we've all been down this road. And I really wish people would learn their fucking history so we could not
Well,
backslide
see, the
and
thing
keep
is that
going forward.
the people that matter, they
Yeah.
know the history and they want to go back to it. They're doing it
I
on purpose.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not just a gentle backslide for them. It's pulling the horse backwards to
Yeah.
get back to where they think was an acceptable time frame,
Yeah.
which just means everyone who is not straight white Christian and totally mentally stable is a neurotypical.
Yeah.
Anybody that's not that is just the
Yeah.
absolute worst. And we are something like 10, 15 times more likely to be abused than to be the
Oh yeah.
person who's actually doing the abuse. So, like, stop
Yeah.
putting that on my community, dog. Like,
Yeah.
stop.
Seriously.
Like, just stop.
Yeah.
I could talk about it for a fucking hour, man. It
Oh,
drives me up the
that
goddamn wall.
should honestly probably be its own podcast, but we probably should jump off this soapbox because we've got each other
Yeah, I
fired
could
up.
say.
And this was about a killer. This movie sucked ass in all the ways.
Do not recommend. Yes.
No recommendation here. None.
But I hope Jason Voorhees is living his best life right now.
I do. I hope he's living
The
his best
actor.
life. Good on
Yeah.
the girl who did Crazy Rich Asians. Love
Yeah,
that movie.
congratulations. Goddamn.
And go buy the daughter's book.
Yeah, go read it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah. So, bye guys.
That's it.
See
Bye.
you next week. Oh, my buttons are gone again.
You just have to move them out.